Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and um, Sun here asked a really nice question. And just to let you know that I normally record at least some of these episodes here, many right now, live on Saturday mornings, my time out in California. So if you want to get in here and hang out with me, I'd love to have more people watching. But he asked a very interesting question. Some sources say that the Soviets killed more Polish than the Germans did. I'm rephrasing it a little bit. What do you think about that? Well, again, I'll get to that in just a moment, but don't know if any of you, some people have watched, but not all from the channel. I have been trying to do some shorts. I don't know, I'm going to continue with them. Most of them have been dealing with the conflict rising in Taiwan recently. But my channel, partially because I haven't been putting out too many videos last few weeks, but even before then, growth on YouTube has been bad for the channel, and I have a few suspicions, and partially just simply YouTube algorithms periodically change, and nothing directed at my channel. Though a couple things I am concerned about my channel, particularly because of various things what we talk about a lot here. So it's really, really helpful if you guys all hit those like buttons, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, put it, share this on some other social media out there somewhere, even if it's you create a Twitter account and there's nobody following it, just use some hashtags and put links up. Google, catalogs the internet, so they know about all this stuff, and the more links you get to a video, the more, outside links, the more it helps. So, or if you've got on a forum somewhere, even a Paradox forum, it's much more legit if you recommend the video than me recommending my own videos. You know what I mean? So it would really help out, even if you just, whether this video or some other video that you particularly like, post a link of it somewhere. I would really love to grow the channel, and I really appreciate that. Now, yes, Mr. Duck, I'm doing some shorts. I'm trying to do this whole thing as a profession. I don't make much money at it. It's pizza money at best, and not even hardly that for in a month. But any little bit helps. Why am I doing shorts? Well, one, YouTube is pushing them in the algorithms. Two, if I can grow the channel, if I can get subscribers from it, and some of them are doing, at least for my channel, rather well. It's really hard for me to bring a topic down to less than 60 seconds. That's been a challenge. A lot of them that I think I'm getting really good at, and then they turn out to be a minute and a half, so I re-record until I get it down to it. But so I am doing some shorts, so you might check those out. But what I'm hoping to do with that is to get people interested in the channel and hit that subscribe button, because even if these people that subscribe, and I have from various things, including some that are, from tutorials on how to install mods and things, the more subscribers you have, the more chances are people are going to get recommended something and see it. Well, the situation in Taiwan is not per se recent, but I get you. Well, it was over Nancy Pelosi's visit and the ongoing, as I speak now, the ongoing live fire exercises inside of exclusive economic zones, if you will. It may not technically be territorial waters, depending on, I'm being very careful with my languages here, of both Taiwan and Japan. And those two countries are really pissed about it. So the situation right now, and that's what I was referring to, there's a long-term ongoing situation that goes back to the Chinese Civil War, of course. But I'm talking about the last 3 or 4 days here. Okay. Who killed more Poles than the Soviets versus the Germans? It's an interesting question. I know it's a little off topic from playing as the U.S., but it's not off topic from what we're doing. And we're talking just sheer loss of life of Polish peoples, which include Jews, because Jews, there was a considerable Jewish population, not maybe huge as a percentage or anything, but they existed. I don't have the facts and figures in front of me, but I'm going to say Germany, and I'll give you some of my reasons. Germany does several, um, outside of, and I mean, in the thousands of Jews are just slaughtered in that they are pulled out of their villages, marched out into a field, and just machine gunned. Um, you know, just sort of just like that fast. They roll into the town. They pull out the Jews, walk them out in the field, machine gun them. And later on, they developed the ghettos, and then moving the people from the ghettos. And they moved people from other parts of Europe into the Warsaw Ghetto as well, but then moving them into the death camps. So that's a lot of people there. But they also shoot a lot of Poles that they identify early on as being subversive, likely subversive elements. Being from the, Polish Socialist Youth Party or whatever. And there was a bunch of these types of organizations that they get a hold of membership lists. And they run around and round these people up and shoot them. So that there's a lot of that going on. There are multiple cases. Oh, well, also, there's other massacres even on the initial invasion of rounding up just people and just massacring them during the initial invasion. Often with, they use some SA troops, not army, SA troops that were Sudeten SA that had been well trained for the war against Czechoslovakia that never really happened. That's why they used them, because they were, as opposed to the standard German SA, which weren't necessarily well trained as a military unit, if you will. But they're coming in doing that stuff. But also as reprisals, there are, that I've read about German occupation in Poland, and it's more like the stuff that I've read is that they talk about it and then they illustrate the events, detailing a few specific events, but that there are many more like this, in which 5 Germans are killed, German soldiers are killed somewhere, and they go to the nearest town or whatever, round up 50 people, because 10 for 1 or whatever it was, or even 30 or 50 to 1. Round them up. Say, if you don't present bring us the guys who shot our people or whatever, or even just, we're going to do anyway, so just do mass reprisal shootings. They kill lots of mass reprisal shootings, people. And so you have that. And those are going on throughout the occupation period. If I remember, and it's been now a couple, 3 years since I've actually, quite honestly, listened to the audiobook that deals with some of this stuff. Just because I was at the time working at a night job, which I could have, headphones on and doing my thing and listening to the audiobook. And so I was consuming a lot of audiobooks then, not that I only want to do things through the audiobook. I'll get to some of your things here in a minute in chat. And if it doesn't matter who killed more, I don't know if it matters, but it's an interesting question, and we'll get to some of the Soviet things here in a moment. That these are going on throughout. You have at least 3, and then possibly, depending on how you want it, more areas of occupation. You have, and with different occupational styles, and it's sort of somewhat illustrated by this map here, is we see this, hashed out area. This hashed out area here, and then it does expand as they move into the Soviet Union, is the general government. And my understanding, if I remember correctly, is the general government is under at least two different administrators. Don't know that I don't think they were Gauleiters, but whatever they were, administrators. And so they had two different policies going on at the same time between the different zones. And then you had the zone up here that is shown that are mostly, if not entirely, had been part of the previous German Empire that had been turned over to Poland and that is reoccupied Germany, and those are a different set of policies. And as I say, depending on how you're drawing your Polish borders, not all of the stuff, especially I think up here, is under the general government. It's under the Reichskommissar of what, Belarus or whatever. So, and so some of the Reichskommissar territorials, and so there's different policies in these different zones. It's not all one policy. Hitler likes competing groups. It's just part of his National Socialism. Is Nazism socialism? Yes. Is Nazi is National Socialism? Is it Marxist socialism? Trying to make everybody equal? No. Okay. See, this is, and I know I have some socialist people here watching, and I talk to some of these other people. No, they're not socialists. Yes, the National Socialists are socialist. No, they are not the type of socialist or communist who is trying to make everybody equal, get everybody equal pay or whatever it is. They're not there. They believe in a hierarchy, meaning that there's going to be people at the top that are going to be rich, but they don't want to, and one of the person that posts some really great Twitter stuff on history, but he's a left-wing person, point out to, no, socialists are for good schools and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, all four of your points, Hitler was for that. Now, for the right type of German, not international socialist as in worrying about, Hitler doesn't care about other ethnic groups. He cares about the Germans. All the policies that this guy stated that what socialists are for, yeah, Hitler was all for those exact policies. He was all for them. In healthcare, Hitler was all for good healthcare. In government healthcare, Hitler was for government healthcare. Hitler does not want privatized healthcare as being the primary healthcare system in Germany. Hitler was a socialist, a national, not international, a national socialist. He is the person who adds those two words to the German Workers' Party that he joined. They already had the first three. He adds the second three, but he adds two words to it before. Hitler is a socialist, but a hierarchical socialist. So, managers, and you can have an ownership class, but they must work within what is good for the nation. And if they're abusing, he doesn't like capitalists because he sees capitalists as exploiting the people, trying to get the most labor out of a worker for the least amount of money paid. See, that's how he sees capitalism, whether there's two types of use of that word. One is free markets and I know people are going on about things. I'll get to your comments. I don't mean to ignore you, but I'm here. Free market capitalism on the one hand, and the other, capitalism or capitalists is the owners of the means of production. But either one of those, the owner very well can be, not always is, but can be trying to, get the most out of his workers by paying the least for it. Okay, Hitler is against that principle, very much so, and so he wants minimum wages that are living wages. He wants all of that, but he is not. So he doesn't want the ownership classes, if you will, whether they're small ownership or big ownership or whatever. He doesn't want the workers or the society or the resources of the nation to be exploited. He wants them to be managed and wants them, in a very socialistic way. But unlike fascism or unlike communism, unlike those two, he does not want centralized planning. Okay, he does not want to have one system centralized done. Um, Now he gets that more and more as time goes on, but only because of the war and the sort of single user needs, if you will, of the war, in that the military is the single user. So we don't care about civilian shoes, we care about army boots. We don't care about clothes for the people, we care about uniforms for the soldiers. So since you don't care about competition, you do what the army wants, or the navy, or the Luftwaffe. I know we could break it down a little bit more, but than truly a single user. But you get the point. Is because of the war, it does become more centralized, but that is very much against Hitler's nature. Hitler wants the idea of, well, yeah, this one evil bastard, Hans Frank, I name it, but I don't know. He's one of the people that's administering part of Poland. Yeah, you do your evil plan here, and evil bastard number 2, you do your plan down here, and we can compare and contrast and see, which evil plan is working the best. And look at it that way. Hitler wants competition. Hitler wants competitions within the government, different agencies. He almost every single area you want to look at, he has different agencies covering the same type of thing. You have things like, even before the war starts, you have Organization Todt, which is a labor construction element, but you also have the RAD, the Reich Arbeitsdienst, or the German Labor Service. And then you also have the DAF, the Deutsches Arbeitersfront, which is a union type element, but that does have labor. So you have these various organizations all sort of competing. Oh, and when you're talking about which is a government organization, something like Organization Todt, which is partially responsible for building the we're talking pre-war, before you get into the war stresses. You have, I know we've gone off from Poland, but we'll get back there. You have the Organization Todt building the Autobahn, but you also have Holzmann, and probably some other major ones, but I know of Holzmann, and Company and Sons or whatever, is a private industrial firm, not a government organization, a private business, building also the Autobahn, as well as both of those organizations are responsible for building the West Wall. So they're wanting to go, hey, yeah, Organization Todt, you're building this, Holzmann and Sons or whatever is building that, and see the price comparison, see the the effectiveness and costs, and can compare and contrast. Hitler wants that competing element, and that is how National Socialism is very different from fascism and very different from communism. Those both want centrally planned, centrally organized, non-competitive type of, as far as I can tell, type of organizations. So Nazism, National Socialism, is not fascism plus racism. No, it's its own thing. Not saying that makes it better or worse because it's its own thing. It's just its own thing, and it is not the same thing, and it is socialistic. Okay, so back, and we'll get to the chat here in a moment, but I know this is taking a while. This is why it's hard for me to make shorts. I have a lot to say. Hopefully interesting. Okay, so Germany is killing a lot of people. Plus, you have the Warsaw Uprising. The Soviets get to right about here, and then 100,000 plus Warsaw residents rise up in revolt, thinking that they're going to take the capital back slightly before the Bolsheviks arrive. I'm using those terms importantly, because this is sort of supported by, and to the point I think even Britain is having some long-range bombers fly in and drop some supplies, airdrop some supplies into Warsaw. But Stalin, and I do truly believe it is Stalin wants these people dead because these are the people that will resist Stalin's uh, occupation of Poland, which had been overwhelmingly pro-Western in viewpoint. He stalls out any German offensive or any offensive against Germans until the Warsaw Rising is fully put down, and then only after that. So there's probably about 100,000 people killed in the Warsaw Uprising alone, because I also have to presume, well, one, they don't kill all of the uprising people because there's just too many and they get away. But there's also, I'm sure, lots of civilians because the Germans are just, sending in bombers again. How many bombers did they, how many people did they bomb, in the bombing of Warsaw in the first time in the invasion? And yeah, I've been mostly looking at this as post-invasion killing of Poles, but when you're bombing to get rid of the uprising people, you're probably also hitting a lot of people that weren't, probably supporting of the uprising, but weren't specifically part of it. So that's another 100,000. Now, the Russians, they kill a lot of Poles too. A lot of Poles die because of the Russians. Some relatively, as wars go at this time, some small amount during the Soviet invasion of Poland, but a lot of the units have already been moved. Once the Germans start going, because the Russians delay it a little bit, their invasion have already been moved west. A lot of the units that are sort of watching the border don't really fight very hard because, to a point, what's the point? We're already losing anyways. So I don't think there's a lot of losses. I know a fair amount of Polish units are able to withdraw down into Romania, including at least one tank outfit that turns over their tanks. That the tanks end up being used by the sort of presidential guard or whatever of Romania. No, Royal Guard, I think. Well, maybe presidential. I don't know. One of the guard outfits. It's just like 20 tanks or something of a particular type. But the units intact do escape into Romania. So not a whole lot there. But I don't have a good look into, because I just haven't read of what Soviet, how many people they would shoot locally, in their occupation, but I'm sure some, maybe a little, maybe a lot, I don't know. But they move out large numbers of people. Basically, all of the prisoners of war that they round up, and that is in the 100,000 plus range, I do believe, they move east. The one group of them that they don't move east is the officers, and they, wherever the Katyn forest is, somewhere here, they massacre them in the thousands. They just shoot them all. There's controversy when Germany finally finds this and publicizes this as the war crime that it was. There's some dispute whether this was, incorrect, black propaganda or propaganda that's untruthful. It was very truthful. The Soviets never directly admit to the British, because they're the ones that sort of push on this, that they did this. They do say at some point when pushed on this, mistakes were made, or words to that effect. The overwhelming, now, at least the young men, and there are some children, as into the hundreds, or maybe even thousands, meaning more than 2,000, some children and women of Polish descent are in these various camps. And the overwhelming majority of these Poles will not fight for the Soviet Union. There are Poles, and they do raise at least one Polish division that are supportive of the communists, but the overwhelming will not serve the Soviet Union. So they get permission to, but they literally walk out of the Soviet Union into Iran. And I think at the time that Iran was still, not occupied yet by the Soviet or the British. And most of the women and children, most are sent down to like Rhodesia. And the rest of the Poles are organized by the British into 2 or 3 divisions that fight. So these are multiple divisions of people that have been in the Gulag system. I am sure that many died in the Gulag system prior to this event happening, and they were dropping like flies as these people were marching out too, because of conditions. It really comes down to the benevolence of Iran and the Iranian people that feed these people once they get there, because they're just about done, and meaning to the point of collapse and starvation by the time they get to Iran. Because they're getting some food on the way, but there's so many of them, and they're walking out, and they're just keep moving, and there's just not enough food to get to, because around wherever to feed them, and they keep moving and literally walking out, and so they get out, but a lot die on the way. And of course, you have all the deaths and destructions of the Soviet occupation into Poland as they, push out the Germans. But I think and so there are, tens of thousands at least, because there's like 5,000 or 6,000 that are killed in the Katian forest, I think, just on that. And maybe somebody in the chat has already put the number up there. But there are a large number of Poles that are killed by the Soviets, during the initial invasion, during the occupation, during, the fighting pushing back west, and the immediate post-war occupations. I keep going into Brest-Litovsk. I would say the deaths of the Poles in Warsaw are partially at Stalin's feet, though of course primarily they have to be at the feet of the trigger pullers. And since they weren't under, the trigger pullers weren't under Stalin's control, they, you have to put primarily German. I don't know. Where the Nazis' heads were at, they couldn't have come to this conclusion, but it probably would have been better for the Nazis. One, you lose a lot of troops and expend a lot of ammunition fighting to retake Warsaw, and of course, Madman Hitler is going to just demand it. But this is sort of why I say their heads aren't at the right spot. But actually, withdrawing from Warsaw probably would have been better for them, because it would have caused chaos for the Soviets to have 100,000 plus armed Poles claiming independence and trying to run and manage this system here. And it's going to be hard to explain that these people are now being shot by the Soviets that are coming in, when these people are allied to the Polish government in exile in London and America, and you get these reports out. What are you, killing our allies now, Soviet Union? And so it might have caused more chaos for the Soviets and their occupation and their push west here, that then trying to hold Warsaw for an extra 20 or 30 days or whatever. And just allow the city to go, and just thinking, well, hey, when we get ready for our great next major push east, well, we'll just be able to take Warsaw anyways, so it won't matter, and we'll destroy the Soviets and whatever forces there then. But no, they don't have their head in the game for that. Okay, hello OCB, it's been a while, good to have you here. Let me scroll up this chat here, look at it. I know this is been a while since I've done this, and I know we haven't been playing. Okay. Oh boy, we've had a lot of stuff here, and I know it was. Wow, we're going up. Okay, traditionally the national technically. Wow, there's been a lot of stuff here. Okay, we're up to where the original question was asked. Okay. It's hard to give good numbers because the USSR. Yeah, you're absolutely. Both sides are lying. Gone Cal, they are absolutely. I mean, I can't give good numbers. I could probably get some books out and give good estimates, but even then, yeah. Do you know the Hundred Years' War? Yes. So, yeah, I do know that. Lasted 116 years. Yep. Okay. Yeah. I know it's not exactly the Hundred Years' War, but it's also not necessarily one war for 100 years. It's just multiple wars that sort of overlap from different sort of factions fighting that sort of take 100 years to happen. Okay, technically, National Socialism is trying to make everyone equal by other standards than Marxism. Well, they weren't trying to make them economically equal. There was no sense, at least that I've gotten from. I mean, you can talk. I'm talking about Hitler's National Socialism as opposed to Himmler's National Socialism, as opposed to Goebbels' National Socialism. I'm just using those three as sort of examples of it. And they all three of those guys have different views on things, economic and otherwise. Himmler wants his SS to be sort of an aristocracy that rules over other ethnic groups, peasantry in the East, where Hitler wants exclusive Aryan zones. He really wants to separate. He doesn't want to have a German elite, knightly class or whatever, ruling over other ethnic groups. He wants to have sort of exclusively German zones, much more so than Himmler does. So you find these divides in it. So we can argue on details because sometimes you can find this guy says this and another guy in there says it a contrary thing. So, but I'm trying to look at what Hitler was pushing. Wait, confused between the two wars, right? Okay. Did socialism start being about public services and not the means of production, an American thing? Well, I think this is an American person pushing it. But he does want in this. I'm not going to throw him under the bus. Other than his politics and periodic Trump derangement syndrome. Hey, you don't have to like Trump, people out there. I'm not saying you got to like Trump, but not everything that Trump ever did was bad. I mean, sometimes just these people are deranged, and he has Trump derangement syndrome. But he does. If you follow Twitter, he does post a lot of good historical stuff when he's not being political. But he does want something like schools, which they are in America, at least mostly, but he wants it almost exclusively, I think, schools to be a government run and managed thing. He wants hospitals to be a government run and managed thing. And I think he would also be happy to ban the eating of meat as well, so that's government interference. So that is it is about the means of production, but I don't think so much that he wants, say, the means of automotive production to be in the government hands, but he wants the healthcare industry, making of medicines, making of surgical equipment, ownership of the hospitals, payment for the doctors, all that to be a government industry. So that is socialism. It is social welfare to have the government give out money, for people's health care, for either poor people or old people like they do in America. And then you go spend that money, the money gets spent only at, for approved health care, things like at hospitals that are privately owned. That is social welfare system, which we have in America for the health care. The only, I think, socialized, if you will, healthcare system is the Veterans Administration, in which the doctors, the nurses, the janitors, the buildings are all owned by the government. And that is a healthcare system that is nationalized and government ownership in America. And I think that is the only one, really. I'm not going to talk about other like prison healthcare or something, but I'm talking about out there. But it's only for veterans. But that is a centralized, planned, single system all over America, directed out of Washington D.C. Just for veterans. I'm not saying you shouldn't have that, but we could talk about that. But otherwise, in America, the actual operation of it is privatized. It's just social welfare. So that is a little bit of So that's where he is. He is a socialist, but not a. I don't think. I don't think he is a socialist that like wants all means of production government owned. It's just what he sees as utilities or rights or whatever kind of stuff. Oh, it's been a while. Confused between them. Let's see. Okay, France and Netherlands. Czech socialism happened to us as a reaction to completely atrocious First Republic oligarchy system. People were living 10 plus generations in Czech Basin to the first. Yeah. And there are different types of socialism. You have to, and different reasons for it. Okay, the Autobahn was already been built during the Weimar. Okay, the Autobahn was just barely started. And of the Autobahn that was built before the war, I believe it's like 90% of it were built under the National Socialists. So you are right in that the Autobahn was conceived under the Weimar, but it was mostly built under Hitler's vision. But it was envisioned prior to Hitler coming to power. He just like, yeah, this is a great idea, and ran with it. Google search, find the numbers: 50,000 killed by the Soviets. Yeah, OCB. Yeah, I'm not saying that. Indeed. Okay, you mean Poland uprising just before? Yeah, that. What I remember, it started by non-commie Polish leaders. Yeah, they wanted to. You're absolutely right, Ragar. They wanted to get control of Poland before the communists took over, or at least the capital area. Was get rid of intellectuals. Absolutely is why they took out the officers. But also those are the people that are going to cause you trouble. To Romania and join the Allied forces. Yet 250,000 sounds about right, OCB, and I don't doubt you got that number right. But also I was meaning, and not just that, because some do come out sort of through Hungary here as well. I don't mean just as simply, and then I think some do escape up into Lithuania and get out that way, but not just as individuals filtering out to the West, but intact fighting units that are coming out through Romania, figuring that the Soviet border is somewhere, around here already. They had yet to take over, this sort of Bessarabia territory. The Soviets hadn't pushed hard, at least, to get in here that would have cut them off. Same happened in the Baltic and Finnish territories. Yes, absolutely. Same happened in the Baltic states. And so, and I'll tell you, partially I'm getting my facts and ideas from what I know of what happens in the Baltic states during occupation, including the moving of, particularly in the Baltic states, I know military-aged men are rounded up and moved east in the Baltic states. And that is what I believe happens in Poland as well. Not just captured soldiers that are put into the Gulag system, but rounding up military-aged men. And the Gulag system is partially an industrial system to either produce things or build canals and roadways and railways. And so it's used. So they see it as removing. And this is going to end up being a special episode here. Removing the people who are likely to cause resistance problems, military-aged men, and then trying to use their labor in a useful way. It isn't just about simply warehousing people in a camp somewhere. I mean, that does happen, but they try to make the camps, like, put them way out in the east somewhere in some forest, and they try to have them do logging and, send wood back to wherever for useful purposes. They try to the Gulag, and I'm not an expert on the Gulag, but they try to do the Gulag to have a useful function, but it's unconcerned about the attrition rates of its workers, shall we say, meaning dying. And if you get sick enough, they don't care. You just get to die. Yeah, Himmler wanted an SS state, but he also wanted sort of an aristocratic German occupation of the East, where Hitler just wants an area exclusively of German people. And so you don't have that sort of aristocratic state. The Soviets have reformed man, or the Soviet man, and achieved it. would break down man and rebuild it. Yeah, they needed to completely get rid of current viewpoints to do that. If you're a new viewer watching this now, how Gamer is when this is Hawaii time. He chats for 2 hours and maybe he gets, yeah, I know, OCB. But I hope it's fun. I hope it's interesting. Because yeah, there are other people out there, and a lot of them have more viewers. Maybe I should do that. That play, including Hearts of Iron, but play these games, and they just focus on playing the game. So I'm trying to differentiate myself from them. Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Maybe I should just be playing the game. I don't know. Like, well, the war is war versus mankind versus it. Just trying to catch up with the chat here. Trying to clip it. Saying Obama still don't. The Autobahn. Autobahn did not start in 1913, not in the way it's conceived and built under the National Socialist regime. Cars did not move fast enough in 1913 to think of the Autobahn. The Autobahn is a because you have the Reichsbahn, which is the national. I'm not exactly sure what Bahn means in Germany. Reich, of course, means like national, or I mean, it has a little bit more. It is sort of national, but it's also imperial or whatever. I mean, there's a little, like Kaiserreich. There's a little bit more to it than that, but there's Reich, and the Reichsbahn is the railway. The Autobahn is sort of the rail. Auto, way. But the Autobahn that they conceive and do is 2 lanes that are uninterrupted. See, the key is that they're uninterrupted, meaning there's no cross streets. And so if you want to go across the Autobahn, or the Autobahn wants to cross over something, you build bridges. And the Autobahn is banked a bit more than modern freeways, at least in America, but banked dealing with speed. So you're driving fast down it, and the corners don't cause you problems, shall we say. And they weren't designing that in 1913. I just know what cars well enough to know they weren't even conceiving that. Now, they were maybe making paved roads that are going from one city to another city in 1913, and they were doing that in freaking America. But the highway system that is based off the Autobahn doesn't get really well. There's a little teeny stretch that might be in the very late 30s ago. There's the Pasadena Freeway from LA to Pasadena, but that is literally like one of the first situations in America. But what we think of as the national highway system that's really championed by Eisenhower is based off the Autobahn, and that's post World War II. And so yeah, they had highways, if you will, the highway system, as in like roads between Washington D.C. and Baltimore, but they would have like stoplights or stop signs on them, so you couldn't go zoom, you go stop, let traffic go the other way, then drive on. So yeah, connective roads, you can probably find them back in 1913 in Germany between cities. It isn't the originally Speedway out Autobahn around World War I didn't mercilessly shallow. It was until 1921 that construction on the highway resumed. Well, okay. Well, yeah, okay. Whatever you want to say, you're sort of pushing. Hello, Kyle. Hearts of Iron Cold War. It'd be interesting to hear your input on the era. Well, yeah, it could be. Okay, so you're talking that there was something built before World War I, and it wasn't, and it wasn't until construction on the highway resumed. Okay, yeah, but prior to Hitler coming to power, very little of the Autobahn was done. It was very much done under Hitler's thing of what we know and think of as the Autobahn. Okay, well, that's going to conclude this episode of looking at Poland and who did the worst war crimes against Poland in World War II. Hopefully it was interesting. Hopefully it was helpful to people. I don't know. What do nations learn? Have nations learned? Do nations learn, people? I don't know. Don't know. Because you look at what's happening right now in Ukraine and Poland. Poland doesn't have historically, I'm not talking like this single moment, but historically well-defined borders because there are not major geographical features that you could anchor your border on. Germany or Italy. You've got Alps and Rhine River and sea borders and whatnot like that. So Poland can be huge or Poland can be small. Poland can be all kinds of things, but I don't know what the governments have learned. But yeah, Poland was sort of doomed in the World War One through World War II era. It was not good. Well, okay. Hopefully everyone learns a little bit from this. See you next time for more, yes, more, hopefully actually Hearts of Iron Play.